What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Daddy Barry, back with another edition of Hall of Famer or Not, Part 3. The rules are pretty self-explanatory. You give me the name of an athlete, past or present, and I tell you whether or not I think they should be in the Hall of Fame or not, or whether an athlete is currently in their Hall of Fame and whether I think they deserve to be there. Without further ado, let's begin. As a proud supporter of the Jags, I would like to propose the one and only Fred Taylor. I think if Taylor had been more durable during his career, he probably would be in the Hall of Fame. His nickname, as it's on its Pro Football Reference page, is literally Fragile Fred, and for good reason. He only played 2 full seasons in 13 years. He finished with over 11,000 yards, 66 touchdowns, a good receiver when he was healthy, very good player, but I don't think he makes the Hall of Fame. Just short, in my opinion. As a lover of defense, Mark Eaton. I know that Mark Eaton, rest in peace, was one of the first guys when I came up with my plumber shit for MJ. I was stunned to find that he was legitimately a car mechanic. Now, let's be honest, the reason he made the NBA was because he was 7'4". His first year came when he was 26 years old. He averaged 6 points per game for his career. Despite being 7'4", he shot 46% from the field. Short answer, no, he's not a Hall of Famer. And long answer, no, he's not a Hall of Famer, although he was a hell of a car mechanic. Chris Hansen. Chris Hansen is definitely in the Hall of Fame for catching pedophiles, although he himself was caught being a bad boy later on. Not pedophilia or anything, but I know he was caught, like, him and his wife had marital issues and stuff, so he's not the perfect guy. But when it comes to catching predators, there's a reason that show is still highly revered today. Definite Hall of Famer. Jamal Lewis. Somewhat similar to Fred Taylor, except he had a higher peak. He had that 2,000-yard season in 2003, but he never really had another season that approached that. He did win a Super Bowl as a rookie in 2000 with the legendary Ravens defense, so I think he's the textbook Hall of very good running back. Same with Taylor. I do think Taylor was slightly better than Lewis, but I don't think either of them are Hall of Fame worthy. Lance Briggs. Briggs was a hell of a player. He ended up 7 Pro Bowls, was first team All-Pro in 2005. He was always going to be overshadowed by Brian Urlacher, but he was a major reason why those Bears defenses were so great for so long. I don't know if he had enough to make the Hall of Fame. It's hard when you're not even the best linebacker on your own team for the majority of your career, but what the hell, I'll say yes, give him the Hall of Fame because I do think his production warrants it. Almost 1,200 tackles, 15 sacks, 16 interceptions. Hell, he deserves it a lot more than his old teammate Devin Hester. Will Clark, baseball. Everybody talks about Will Clark for his swing. Looking at his numbers, he was a career 303 hitter, had an OPS plus of 137, which is very, very good. Question is, though, did he have the counting stats? He doesn't have even 2,200 hits, under 300 homers. The rate stats are there. The slash line is there. I just don't think the longevity was there. Although I would not be opposed to him making the Hall of Fame. I would say he falls just shy, in my opinion. Zach Ertz. I love Zach Ertz as an Eagles fan, obviously, because he'll always be a member of that 2017 team that won it all, and he scored the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. But no, he's not a Hall of Famer. He was a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. Look at his career numbers. He currently has 46 touchdowns, 700 catches, 714 yards. Very, very good. Not Hall of Fame worthy. Jason Peters. I mean, the fact that he's still playing is kind of ridiculous. He entered the league in 2004. He was a tight end in college. He's hung on probably 4 or 5 years too long, but yeah, when he was in his prime, he was a monster. 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first team All-Pro. He won the Super Bowl in 2017 with the Eagles while on IR. He was a Hall of Fame 2010s team. So yeah, I do think he deserves to be a Hall of Famer, although he will not be remembered for his last couple seasons with Dallas and the Bears and Seattle. Mike Holmgren. This is a good one. I believe, yes, Mike Holmgren deserves to make the Hall of Fame. Some people say that he was carried by Favre in Green Bay, but I would say it's the opposite. All of Favre's best seasons, basically, not all of them, but most of them came when Holmgren was there, and the moment Holmgren left, Favre, especially in the playoffs, went to shit. Made 3 Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl in San Francisco. He was the offensive coordinator of arguably the best team ever, 49ers in 1980. He had that going for him. To make the Super Bowl with 2 different teams as a head coach that's legit. 161 wins, won almost 60% of his games. I would say yes, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, especially if guys like Tony Dungy's in there. Warren Zevon. Yes, Warren Zevon is a Hall of Famer, and the picture I chose here for Excitable Boy is for a reason, because Excitable Boy reminds me a lot of my puppy Scooby, because the song Excitable Boy, for those who don't know, is about a boy who continues continues to do a lot of very bad things, but those around him keep dismissing it as, oh, he's just an excitable boy, and he ends up becoming a murderer and a rapist, and he goes to jail and stuff. But everybody just keeps saying, oh, he's an excitable boy. Now, Scooby obviously isn't a murderer or a rapist that I know of, but he loves biting people and he loves getting in trouble, but we all just give him a pass because he's just an excitable boy and he's so handsome. But anyway, I just wanted to have that little spiel for you guys. I think you guys would enjoy that. But yes, Warren Zevon, Hall of Famer. Werewolves in London, baby. Mike Shanahan. I would say yes, Shanahan is a Hall of Famer. He has 2 Super Bowl wins, 170 career wins. I will say, though, that his playoff success was very, very limited outside of 97 and 98, which might be why he hasn't been inducted yet. Some might say he was a product of Elway, because after Elway retired, he went on to coach 14 more seasons and only won 1 playoff game in those 14 seasons. He missed the playoffs 9 times in those final 14 seasons without Elway, but I think his coaching tree is obviously great. His son, who he had sex to create, Kyle Shanahan, is one of the best minds ever. Might be even better than his father in terms of offensive scheme, although fuck him for Super Bowl 51. But yeah, I just think his coaching tree combined with his volume totals, 2 rings, and the fact he also won a ring as an offensive coordinator with the 49ers in 94 when Steve Young threw 6 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Mike Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. He should be in the Hall of Fame to me. Also was a major part of Robert Griffin III's dynamic rookie season and turning Jake Plummer's career around in Denver. And Jay Cutler had his best season in 2008 with Shanahan as his coach, as well as all of the running backs that had monster seasons. Terrell Davis, Clinton Portis, Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson. The list goes on and on, folks. Alfred Morris, Hall of Famer. Gino Atkins. Atkins was basically like a poor man's Aaron Donald. He made 8 Pro Bowls, 2-time first-team All-Pro, Hall of Famer in terms of the All-2010s team, but he played in Cincinnati. He never won a playoff game, so he doesn't get a lot of buzz. Look at his career total, 75.5 sacks. He's a very, very tough one. My gut instinct is no, just because I don't know if he had enough sacks. But again, it's hard because I'm going to be honest, I wasn't watching defensive tackles every single play, but his impact was certainly felt. But my gut says no, although I feel like I'm kind of making a mistake by saying no, but I'll go with it. I'm a man of conviction. I say no. Sante Samuel. Sante Samuel is a funny one because he played for my Eagles and he actually made a couple Pro Bowls with them. He ended up with 51 career interceptions. He had 6 pick sixes. He had 4 more pick sixes in the playoffs, which is ironic. He actually did win 2 Super Bowls, led the league in interceptions twice, was first team All-Pro in 07, and yet all anybody remembers him for, at least what Brady fans remember him for, is Super Bowl 42, where he supposedly dropped the Super Bowl clinching interception, which for me wasn't quite as cut and dry as Brady fans make it out to be. He was also very susceptible to double moves. He was a ball hawk. He was kind of like a Marcus Peters. He's one of those guys, he's going to get a lot of interceptions. D'Angelo Hall, you know what I mean? Like, going to get a lot of interceptions, but they can get burnt, and they're susceptible to being burned. But at the same time, like, he was very, very good. I don't think in coverage he was consistent enough in order to warrant being a Hall of Famer. But, I mean, again, I wasn't watching him every single play. Statistically, I would say he falls just short. And also, he dick rides Tom Brady, so fuck him. Jesse Tuggle. Tuggle's interesting. You know, it's hard because he ended up playing 14 years with the Falcons. He never won any Super Bowls, although he did play in Super Bowl 33. He had a ton of tackles. Now, the farther back you go looking at tackles for players, the more wonky the data gets, because it says here he had several seasons in the early 90s with over 200 tackles, which led the league. And Pro Football Reference itself talks about how prior to 94, all tackles are put into combined, though they're unofficial and inconsistently recorded from team to team. But there's no question that he was a tackling machine. He made 5 Pro Bowls. He had 6 career interceptions, 21 career sacks, nearly 2,000 tackles. I would put him in the Hall of Fame just because of the sheer volume of his numbers. He also is the father of Grady Jarrett, who played excellent in Super Bowl 51, one of the very few Falcons players who could hold his head up high after blowing that 28-3 lead. So I would say yes, Jesse Tuggle should be a Hall of Famer. Mark Gastineau made 5 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, was the 1984 UPI Defensive Player of the Year. He had 2 20-sack seasons. He led the league in sacks in back-to-back years in 83 and 84. He set the then single-season sack record with 22 sacks in 1984 until it was later broken controversially by Michael Strahan thanks to Brett Favre. The worst thing Brett Favre ever did, by the way, giving Strahan that sack. Anyway, basically, he was dominant for about 6 years, and then he fell off very, very fast after 85. I don't really know how good his run defense was, because again, this is before I was born, but I would say if you're a guy, like he was in Defensive Player of the Year categories for almost a half decade, made 3 All-Pro teams in a row, I would say yes, I would give him the Hall of Fame because his peak was Hall of Fame worthy. And also his daughter, Brittany, back in the day was so fucking hot. So I give him bonus points for that. And his ex-wife's also really hot too. So I will say he's a Hall of Famer. But seriously, if you haven't seen his daughter, check her out. She's 40, by the way. Okay, so I'm not talking about a little girl. So don't think of that on pedophile, you sick fucks. I don't remember if you've done this player, but Dez Bryant. No, Dez Bryant is not a Hall of Famer, even though he had a nice 3-year run there from 2012 to 2014. 3-time Pro Bowler. He made first-team All-Pro in 2014, led the league in touchdown catches. He finished his career with 75 touchdown catches, which is good, but 533 catches, 7,500 yards. Good, not great, and never won anything. I feel like if you're going to be in the Hall of Fame with those type of numbers, you better have had a lot of legendary playoff moments, and he did have a legendary postseason moment, but really for all the wrong reasons, in the famous no catch in 2014 in Green Bay. If he had kept up his pace that he had from 2012 to 2014 for 4 or 5 more years, then I could see him being a Hall of Famer, but he just didn't have a big enough peak. He fell off too quickly after 2014. Mark Burley, Mr. Consistent for the Chicago White Sox, and later on for the Blue Jays, he did win a World Series with the White Sox in 2005, which, as a side note, I feel like literally nobody ever, I feel like that didn't actually happen. I don't remember anything about it. If you tell somebody Chicago White Sox won the World Series in 2005, I feel like people would be like, no, that didn't happen. It's like, oh yeah, it really did happen. I can't believe it actually happened. It seems like nobody even fucking talks about it. His career ERA plus was 1.17, which is good, not great. He was a workhorse, that's for sure. He finished with 59 WAR, which seems to be on the borderline of Hall of Fame, not just missing out on the Hall of Fame. The thing about him, though, was that his whip wasn't great. He led the league in hits allowed 4 different times. He gave up almost 3,500 hits. He did win 214 games, win percentage 57%. Just a very, very good player, but he never had that one dominant season. I would say he just misses out on being a Hall of Famer, but a very, very respectable career. Luis Scola is not a Hall of Famer to me, unless you're talking about including his international career. I mean, I think if you look at him internationally, then yes, but just strictly based off of his NBA career, no. It's a pretty easy no. He also had a foot for a face. That's what I'll always remember about him. Amare Stoudemire. This one's tougher. Amare, which, by the way, the funniest nickname, because when he was with the Knicks, he was always injury prone after his first year. And I don't know where I heard it, but somebody gave him the funniest nickname I've ever heard any athlete given, in terms of pun, in terms of the play on words, and how fitting it was. They called him MRI Stoudemire. And so every time I see his name now, that's the first thing I think of. But man, it's hard because he was 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, won Rookie of the Year in 2003. My issue with Amare was that he fell off really, really fast after 2011. Really, really quickly. If he had a couple more seasons of elite production, I feel like he would be in the Hall of Fame. He still might get, again, I say this every time I do these videos, the Basketball Hall of Fame, the standards are just ridiculously low, so he probably will get in the Hall of Fame someday anyway. Question is, should he get into the Hall of Fame? In my opinion, no, he doesn't have the longevity, or he had a great peak, but not like an all-time dominant peak. He wasn't a great passer, underwhelming rebounder. He had very, very big issues defensively as well. Didn't win any championships, so no, he's not a Hall of Famer to me, but was a very, very good player. And the Cavaliers should have traded for him in LeBron's last year there in 2010 instead of going for fucking Anton Jameson. The Cavaliers did not want to trade for Amare because they didn't want to get rid of J.J. Hickson. That's what LeBron was dealing with the first 7 years of his career. I want to hear your take on Trey Young. Well, statistically, Trey Young, because he has the ball all the time, I mean, statistically, he's a Hall of Famer. There's no question. I'm looking at his career averages now: 25.6 points, 9.4 assists per game. Those are Hall of Fame numbers. His efficiency, though, this is the thing with Trey Young. Trey Young has his reputation as the sharpshooter because when he was at Oklahoma, he made a lot of deep threes, and people just called him the next Steph Curry. He's a career 35% three-point shooter. Okay, he's probably the worst quote-unquote elite shooter I've ever seen. His highlights look great because when he takes a lot of deep threes, but his shot selection is terrible. His efficiency isn't very good, and it's yet to be seen. So obviously defensively, he's also very, very bad. He had one deep playoff run, which happened in 2021. Ever since then, and before then too, nothing to really write home about. But I think if he's going to keep producing like this, then yes, he's going to be a Hall of Famer because he's going to keep making All-Star games, and his advanced stats, I think, will get him there. But I do think he's not quite as good as his numbers suggest that he is. Ricky Watters, 5-time Pro Bowler, won a Super Bowl in '94 with 49ers. The short answer is no, I do not think he is a Hall of Famer. Although if he had stayed with the 49ers instead of going to the Eagles, maybe the 49ers would have won a couple more rings had he not left in free agency after that year. I don't know. He led the league in scrimmage yards in '96. After that, he had over 10,000 yards running, 78 rushing touchdowns. Very good receiver out of the backfield. Again, like with Jamal Lewis, like with Fred Taylor, I feel like the longevity's not there and the peak wasn't dominant enough. I feel like if you're a running back to be the Hall of Fame, you have to have either or. You have to either have like a 2 or 3 year peak that's unbelievable, or you have to have incredible longevity. And I feel like Ricky Watters kind of lacked both of those. So I would say no. For who? For what? Bill Laimbeer. This is a good one. With the way Laimbeer is talked about throughout the annals of NBA history, you would kind of think that he was in the Hall of Fame already, but he's not. And statistically, I would say he's like right on the borderline of making it, but he was a guy who, he led the league in rebounds one year. He topped out at around 17, 16 points a game in the early to mid 80s. He's always going to be most known for being a troll and starting fights and beating people up and shit like that. But he did actually have more game, I think, than people remember, although I do not think, he was also extremely durable. I do not think he was a Hall of Fame caliber player, but a very good player who was also a troll that everybody hated. T.Y. Hilton, no. T.Y. Hilton, very, very good player. Maybe if he and Andrew Luck had a couple more seasons together. He led the league in receiving yards in 2016. Finished I don't even know, is he done playing yet? I don't know. He played last year with Dallas, but his last good season was 2018, which was Andrew Luck's final year. He is a little under 200 yards shy of 10,000, but even then, he has 53 career receiving touchdowns, didn't win any Super Bowls. Very good career, not a Hall of Famer. Billy Wagner. Now, this is another one. I know in the past I've created some controversy by talking about how I don't think special teamers belong in the Hall of Fame for the NFL, and I stand by that. And one of my similar hot takes for baseball is that closers in most instances should not be Hall of Famers. Mariano Rivera is an exception. Billy Wagner, the reason why the thing is, if you're a closer, you're brought in for the most high leverage innings. Your job is to get the game over with. And whether it's fair or not, Billy Wagner was an absolutely atrocious postseason closer. And I know it's a small sample size, but that's literally part of the reason why I think closers shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, is because they don't pitch that many innings. Even if those innings have a lot of leverage. His ERA for the postseason in his career, 10.03. He had a whip of 1.971. That means that in his postseason career, which was 11 2/3 innings, he was giving up almost 2 hits an inning. He was just atrocious, and you could say a big reason why his teams did not win more, even though when he was in his prime in the regular season, he did a really, really good job in terms of getting saves. He did finish with over 400 saves, but no, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Kean Johnson. Kean's a guy, he was the first overall pick in '96, and you could argue he wasn't even, I'm looking at his draft class. You had Terrell Owens, you had Marvin Harrison, Mushin Muhammad. He was the first overall pick, and he had a good career. He had over 10,000 yards, 64 catches. He won a Super Bowl with Tampa. Good career. I would not say that he's a Hall of Famer. No, he was more of a possession receiver. He peaked in year 3 with the Jets, but made a couple Pro Bowls. Not a Hall of Famer, though. And the 3rd best receiver in his own draft class. Patrick Mahomes, if he retired right now. Obviously, yes. Who the fuck would say Patrick Mahomes is not a Hall of Famer? I mean, even at this point, he's been 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl rings, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. That's Hall of Fame. Bang. So he is solidified. No matter what he does the rest of his career, he is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Fame. Statistically, although he's having the worst year of his career this year, he's already there. If you have multiple MVPs and multiple Super Bowl rings and multiple Super Bowl MVPs, you are a lock to make the Hall of Fame. Ndamukong Suh. This is an interesting one. I remember watching Suh at Nebraska, and he was so unbelievably dominant, and he probably should have won the Heisman, but they don't give the Heisman to defensive players. So he comes into the league. He was a second overall pick. He had a dominant rookie year, won Rookie of the Year, was first team All-Pro, he set his career high in sacks as a rookie, which is double digits, and he had a couple more great seasons, but he never really became the dominant force. Like, he was supposed to be like what Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt were. He never quite became that dominant, but he's made 5 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, won a Super Bowl with Tampa in 2020. He's been to a couple more Super Bowls. I would say he falls short. He has 71.5 sacks, which for a defensive tackle is normally pretty good, but I would say that he is a very good player, not a Hall of Famer. I hope he does not stomp on my nuts after this now. Drew Pearson, the original 88 for the Cowboys. He finally got into the Hall of Fame a couple years ago after being out of the Hall of Fame for a while. 3 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, won a Super Bowl, was All-Decade for the 1970s. It was, looking at his career stats, just his raw career stats, 489 catches, 7,822 yards, 48 touchdowns. Today's era, that wouldn't be Hall of Fame worthy, but this was in the 70s. 70s were like the worst offensive era in history. He was also known for clutch moments, although I'm looking at his career postseason numbers. It's interesting. He played in 22 playoff games, never had a single 100-yard playoff, but I guess he's a Hall of Famer. He would not have been my first choice to be a Hall of Famer. I still think there are other receivers out there, like Henry Ellard, Sterling Sharp. That's just off the top of my head. I think there are a lot of other receivers that I would have put in the Hall of Fame before I went with Drew Pearson. But again, he still deserves a Hall of Fame more than Devin Hester. J.J. Redick. J.J. Redick, not a Hall of Famer for his NBA career. Although, again, I say this every time because the NBA, or the Basketball Hall of Fame as it's officially known, has lower standards than the Kardashians. Everybody basically gets in, and he was one of the greatest college basketball players ever at Duke, and he was really the last, I would say, well-known and well-hated college players who went all 4 years. He looked like he was going to be a bust early on in his career, but then he ended up carving out a very respectable career. He was most famous for being on those Clippers teams, Lob City Clippers teams that always shit their pants in the playoffs. He ended up having a very respectable career, but no, he's not a Hall of Famer. Anthony Rizzo. Rizzo is an interesting one. He was very durable for a lot of years with Cubs, consistently churned out 30 homer seasons, had 4 straight 100 RBI seasons. I don't know, though, in terms of him making the Hall of Fame. He's now having a second act with the Yankees. Looking at his career slash line, 263 hitter, 36.4 on base percentage, OPS plus 125. That's very good. He does have that ring in 2016 with the Cubs. His postseason numbers are nothing special, though. So although he did have huge numbers in the World Series that he won, he has a career WAR of 39.7. So he's going to have probably, I would say, 4 or 5 more All-Star caliber seasons. And even then, I would say it would probably be no. Come up just short. David Bakhtiari. If you had asked me this question 3 years ago, I probably would have said yes. Ever since he tore his ACL late in 2020, before the Packers went to the playoffs, he played in 1 game in 2021. He played in 11 games in 2022, and he played in 1 game this year. So he's played 13 games combined in the last 3 seasons. I do not think he's going to make it to the Hall of Fame. Before that, he had 2 Pro Bowls, 2 first-team All-Pros, but he just hasn't been on the field. And even before that, not enough to, in my opinion, get to Canton. But he'll always have the beer chugging clip from when he was at the Bucks game. Something tells me that he'll probably be reunited with Aaron Rodgers in New York soon. Brian Westbrook. I loved Brian Westbrook, but the answer is no. He was not a Hall of Famer. He was just not durable enough. Had he been more durable, he probably might have made the Hall of Fame, but he was an incredible player when he was healthy, all around, great receiver out of the backfield, but he was always fucking hurt, and that might have been a big reason why the Eagles could never get over the hump to win a Super Bowl. Not a player, but a coach, Tom Coughlin. Coughlin's an interesting one to me because he does have 2 Super Bowls, as we all know, but those were kind of fluky, and his career winning percentage of 53% is not great. I gotta be honest, I'm kind of more impressed by his Jacksonville tenure than I am with the Giants, because with the Giants, he had those 2 Super Bowl runs and then literally nothing outside of that. The fact that he made the Jaguars respectable as an expansion franchise so quickly, and the fact that they made a couple AFC Championship games with him there, I would say is somewhat more impressive than him with the Giants. But I don't know. I just feel like he had too many blah seasons, in my opinion. Too many losing seasons. Too much mediocrity for him to be considered a Hall of Fame coach, to me. And I know that may sound like just a biased Eagles hater. Well, guess what? It's my fucking video. I can choose what I want to do. Ryan Howard from the Phillies. Yes, I remember him very, very well. 3-time All-Star, MVP, Rookie of the Year, won a World Series in 2008, NLCS MVP, led the NL in home runs twice, RBIs 3 times, and he belongs nowhere near the Hall of Fame because he was a dog shit defender and he struck out so many times. He had just under 1,500 career hits and 1,843 strikeouts. So he had basically 400 more career strikeouts than he did hits, which is fine, but he started out his first, I would say, 7 years or so, maybe potentially being a Hall of Famer, but he fell off of a cliff after 2011. Yeah, so all those big home runs and all those big homer seasons he had early in his career, he was not able to maintain that, although he did get a World Series ring and a couple World Series appearances out of it. But yeah, Big Piece, as he was known, does not deserve to make the Hall of Fame. His teammate, Jimmy Rollins, again, won an MVP, 3-time All-Star, won the World Series 2008, was a Silver Slugger, 4-time Gold Glove winner. My issue with Rollins is right away is he had only an OPS plus of 95 for his career. So literally, statistically, he was a below average hitter for his career. And because of that, I have a hard time saying that he belongs in the Hall of Fame if you're a below average hitter. I think fielding is overrated in baseball, personally. And he doesn't have any of the real milestone hit numbers. He doesn't have 3,000 hits. He has 2,455 career hits. He has 231 homers, 936 RBIs. He was a very good player, or a good player. He had a career WAR of 47.6, which is just short of Hall of Fame standards. Usually 65-ish is 65 career WAR is usually what you get for Hall of Famers. I would say that offensively, he just didn't have enough offense. The OPS plus isn't good enough for me for him to be considered a Hall of Famer. Joey Porter, Sr. Well, let's see, 4-time Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro, won a Super Bowl in 2005 with the Steelers, second team All-Decade of the 2000s, finished his career with 98 sacks, 12 interceptions, almost 700 tackles. Very, very good career. Don't think he was decorated enough to be considered a Hall of Famer, although he belongs in the Hall of Very Good. He was also on that famous 1-in-15-07 Dolphins team, which I always found ironic that he left the Steelers for the Dolphins, but hey, money talks. And also his son now plays for the Steelers. In case you didn't know that, because his name is Joey Porter Jr., just in case you might not have known. Greg Olsen. His real name is spelled with an E, but I'll give you a pass for it. Yeah, Greg Olsen, 3-time Pro Bowler, not a Hall of Famer, although he finished with 742 catches, 8,683 yards, and 60 career touchdowns, all while having a ridiculously large third leg in his pants the entire time. He had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons with the Panthers, was a big reason for them making the Super Bowl in 2015. Made a couple second-team All-Pros, but no, he's not a Hall of Famer, although he is one of the better announcers that I've ever heard and just seems like an all-around good guy that everybody likes. So he has that going for him, but no, he's not a Hall of Famer, but a very, very good player, though, for a good time. Just never dominant. Bo Jackson, rare athlete. Bo Jackson is one of the greatest pure athletes we've ever seen, but I also think he's one of the most overrated athletes we've ever seen because people always like to project what he would have done had he just focused on football or had he just focused on baseball or if he hadn't gotten hurt. Fact is that Jim Harbaugh has more career rushing yards than Bo Jackson. And in baseball, he was extremely strikeout prone. He made the All-Star game in 1989. He won MVP of the All-Star game and he hit towering home runs and he has all these tremendous highlights because he was like this superhuman athlete. But you look at his career numbers in baseball too, an OPS plus of 112, which is good. He wasn't a bad baseball player, but he wasn't this Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr., Willie Mays caliber player that everyone seems to make him out to be. Had he strictly focused on football, I think he would have been a Hall of Fame running back. But guess what? He didn't, and he couldn't stay healthy. And yet, I don't think there's ever been an athlete that's actually accomplished less as a professional athlete that gets talked about more than Bo Jackson. That's my opinion. So no, he is not a Hall of Famer in either football or baseball. Tom Chambers. Chambers, a guy, does kind of get forgotten about because he never really won anything and because he was white. His most famous career moment was when he dunked on Mark Jackson. Had a season in the late 80s where he averaged 27 points per game. He won All-Star game in 1987, 4-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA. Finished with just a little over 20,000 career points. points. Wasn't known for much of a defender or passer. His career kind of reminds me a lot of Anton Jameson, that type of guy who sticks around a long time, had a couple very good seasons, never won in championships, has pretty nice counting stats, but was never truly a dominant player. I would say no, he does not belong in the Hall of Fame. His advanced stats also aren't great or Hall of Fame worthy either. Carri Wood, obviously not. Carri Wood, talent-wise, had he not gotten hurt, yes, he probably had Hall of Fame talent, as was evidenced by his rookie season. He had, I think, a 20 strikeout game as a rookie in the heart of the steroid era, but then he had a bunch of injuries, and after 2003, he could never really stay healthy. Made a couple all-star teams, but he finished with 27.6 career WAR. He won Rookie of the Year. He led the league in strikeouts, but, he was not, again, had he stayed healthy, both him and Mark Pryor, actually, might have both been Hall of Famers, but that's kind of the thing with pitchers in baseball, is it seems like every pitcher that's a superstar gets hurt or has Tommy John or has elbow problems. It's crazy. Kind of scary. But no, he's not a Hall of Famer, although he does kind of look like Leonardo DiCaprio. Mark Aguirre. Yeah, Aguirre is one of those kind of forgotten about first overall picks. He was drafted to Dallas in the early 80s, and those were some teams that were also Rans in the Western Conference during the Showtime Lakers era. He was an unbelievable scorer. He peaked at 29.5 points per game in 84, 3 All-Star teams with the Mavericks. He was known also for being lazy and fat, kind of like James Harden. And then he was traded to the Pistons, where he had a second act, kind of coming off the bench as one of their other helpers, and he ended up winning 2 championships there. His advanced stats are okay, not great. I would say he's not a Hall of Famer, but if he had stayed with Dallas for longer and had a couple more 25 point per game seasons, I think he might have been on track to be a Hall of Famer, but he kind of sacrificed that in order to come off the bench and be a part-time role player with the Pistons. But no, I would say he's not a Hall of Famer, although he was very good. And finally, I just want to know the day Scooby gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. Well, you're going to have to wait a long time, because Scooby has been a very bad boy lately, and I don't think he's going to make the Hall of Fame anytime soon, but god damn it, he's just so fucking handsome. Look at how handsome he is. And he knows he's handsome too. That's the bad part, is that he has that smug, handsome look on his face. He knows he's handsome. He knows he can get away with doing a lot of naughty things. And really, at this point, we're all at his mercy, and there's no telling when he's going to decide to try and take over the world. We just have to hope that his very, very short attention span, because he's usually very easily distracted by tennis balls, by Kongs, by peanut butter bones, squirrels, things like that. Hopefully his attention span is able to prevent him from taking over the world. But at this point, he's not going to make the Hall of Fame anytime soon. I'm just kidding. I love him. He's so adorable. But he does like to bite a little bit too much, and he does jump on the furniture a little bit too much, which I do not like. But hey, he's just an excitable boy.